open on a tight, trembling shot of an aged, leather-bound journal. A single drop of ink falls, spreading like blood on yellowed parchment. Slow, tense music begins, a low heartbeat of drums and a lone, mournful fiddle. What if everything you've ever been taught about courage was built on a lie? What if the story of the Alamo isn't a legend but a gravesite, with one last secret buried in the ashes? The journal pages turned, revealing a stark, hand-drawn sketch, a single figure standing before a burning fortress. For 187 years, the victors wrote the history. They gave us heroes, martyrs, a perfect symbol of sacrifice. But history belongs to those who survive. Cut to rapid, subliminal flashes, a Mexican blade catching the dawn light, a wall of soldiers scaling a parapet, the silhouette of a man watching, hidden only. One man walked out of that fortress alive. Not a colonel, not a frontiersman, an enslaved man named Joe Travis. And for nearly 2 centuries, his account, what he really saw, what he really heard, has been the most dangerous story in Texas. Music swells, then drops into total silence. The screen goes black. A sharp, direct whisper. Tonight, that ends. Text appears, etched as if by a blade into the black screen. Blood at the Alamo, the survivor's secret. This is not the story from your textbook. This is the raw, unvarnished truth. The stench of black powder and burning flesh. The final, vengeful act of a dying commander. The cold order from Santa Anna himself, and the shocking reason why Joe Travis was almost silenced forever, moments after he was spared. A single, echoing gunshot rings out. The title text shatters like glass. They tried to bury his testimony with the bodies. They failed. The survivor's secret is finally told. But before we begin, like and subscribe. What if everything you've been taught about the Alamo was a carefully constructed falsehood? This day, we reveal a startling fact, purposely buried for 187 years, not by accident, but by the winners. A solitary man walked out of that tomb alive. His name was Joe Travis. What he saw will shatter the myth. Cold steel, charred bodies, and a secret so explosive it could rewrite the past. Stay until the final second. The censored Eyewitness record starts here. The world thinks of the Alamo as a monument to bravery, yet the man who endured its last hour named it a butcher's yard. For 187 years, one narrative has been kept secret, not lost to the ages, but intentionally suppressed. Joe Travis, an enslaved man belonging to Colonel William Barrett Travis, did not just see the massacre, he lived through it. The Mexican saber that cut his flesh, the smell of burning Texan dead, the precise words Santa Anna spoke threatening to march on Washington. This is not the cleaned-up story from your classroom. This is the raw testimony, the bloodshed, the gunpowder, and the treachery from the sole survivor. Travis's last deed, driving his knife into a Mexican general as he lay dying, Jim Bowie's corpse, chopped like butcher's meat, and Davy Crockett, he dragged 24 foes to hell with him. They soaked the bodies in oil. A few chuckled as they lit the pyre. This night, the outlawed specifics are disclosed to all. What truly occurred when the final defender dropped, and why the conquerors aimed to silence Joe Travis for all time. The dead tell no lies, and neither shall I. But before we begin, please like and subscribe to our channel to help our cause. We, the defenders, had been ground down to utter exhaustion by endless days of watchfulness and back-breaking work. On the night before that fateful Sunday, every soldier toiled long past midnight, our spent bodies falling into sleep only hours before the attack, guards included, all but the commander, whose sharp cry tore through the quiet. 3 sentries placed outside the walls likely fell to this deadly weariness, for no alarm was ever shouted. The enemy's blades fell in silence, quick and merciless. I was asleep in my master's room when the noise erupted. Colonel Travis sprang up, musket ready, saber shining at his side, and yelled for me to follow. I did, grabbed my own gun, and chased after his desperate rush. Travis scrambled onto the parapet, his voice a ragged roar to his troops. "To me, men! The devils are upon us. We'll greet them with fury and lead." A shot cracked from his gun. My own blast answered it, but I had hardly stepped from the powder haze when Travis was hit, a grievous wound. He sagged against the inner wall, fighting to stand, his lifeblood soaking the earth beneath him. Twice they raised their ladders, twice thrown back by frantic men, though I saw little of it. After my master fell, I hid in a storage room, firing shot after shot through its loophole, even as the wave finally broke our lines. On their 3rd try, the soldiers climbed unopposed, pouring into the courtyard like an unstoppable flood. What came next was slaughter, simple and savage. Men fought body to body, rifle butts cracking heads, bayonets spilling guts, pistols held to chests and fired at point-blank range. No mercy was offered and none was asked for. Only the raw animal struggle to live, until the last Texan fighter was slain. Colonel Travis, bleeding and slumped on the blood-soaked ground, still gripped his sword when General Morales passed by. The Mexican commander brought his own blade down in a killing blow, but Travis, with his fading power, blocked the strike and plunged his own steel deep into the general's stomach. Both men collapsed then, locked in a final, deadly union. It was my master's last act of defiance. The few Americans still on their feet retreated to whatever cover the failing walls could give, battling on until only a sick man named Warner was left. He let his weapon fall, begging for pity. The troops held their fire at first, but when Santa Anna himself arrived, he coldly commanded the man be shot. I heard the gunfire from my hiding spot. As for Jim Bowie, the tale goes that he fired his pistols through the door of his sick room until he was killed. When the enemy found him, his body was hacked to pieces, almost impossible to know. Davy Crockett and a small band of his men were found piled together, encircled by 24 Mexican corpses, a stark proof of their final stand. The women and the black people inside the fort, myself among them, were largely saved. Only one woman died. A stray bullet caught her as she ran past the artillery. When the fighting was done, officers walked through the ruin calling for any black persons to come forward. I stepped out shaking. "Here's one," I shouted. 2 soldiers ran at me. One fired his musket. The ball tore into my side. The other lunged with his bayonet, the point grating against my ribs. I believed I was finished until Captain Béranger stepped in, shouting at them to halt. When the air cleared, the Mexicans kept most of us black people alive, along with a few of their own women, including the wife of a certain doctor and her sister, a Miss Navarro. Both were taken to their father, a Don Angel Navarro in Bexar, under guard. Mrs. Dickinson, the lieutenant's widow, and her small child were also spared, though I learned later they were sent across the lines into Texas under a ragged white flag. Once the killing was over, Santa Anna ordered his men into a hollow square. He marched to the center and addressed them with sharp, cutting gestures, his words like a saber's edge. The troops roared back, their shouts so dense they seemed to blot out the morning sun. The general struck me as a thin, tall man, dressed more plainly than any officer I'd ever seen. Just a common wool coat, no badges or marks to show his rank. Like one of the Methodist preachers, I told the Mexicans when they made me describe him. They took me to Bechar afterward, holding me there for days. Once, they led me out to witness their army's grand parade, lines of foot soldiers and horsemen covering the land, their flags snapping like carrion birds. A mocking officer boasted they were 8,000 strong, but anyone who had traveled that country knew the truth. The ground they'd massed on was cut with ravines and thorny scrub, fit for barely half that number. Santa Anna questioned me himself in a dark room that stank of powder and fear. His eyes fixed on mine as he asked about Texas, how many rebels we had if more American soldiers were coming to help. "Will more come?" he barked, pacing like a trapped beast. When I stammered that I knew nothing, he grimaced and straightened. "It is no matter," he stated. "I have armies enough to plant my flag over your Washington city." His voice went cold, as if the idea itself was a cruel joke. Later, I looked through a gap in the wall as Mexican soldiers piled our dead, Travis, Crockett, and all the rest, into a terrible mound. They soaked the bodies with oil and set them afire. The smoke twisted black against the sky, carrying a smell that stayed in my clothes for days. Some of the soldiers laughed as they threw splintered wood to feed the blaze. Others made the sign of the cross and turned their faces away. Joe Travis's testimony endured, but the doubts it sows. They burned fiercer than Santa Anna's pyre. Why did Santa Anna spare Joe only to almost have him killed minutes later? Why scrub Travis's final brave act from the record? And why did the Mexican army exaggerate their strength, unless they feared the world learning how near the Alamo came to standing firm? Comment below. Who really lies under the Alamo's shadow? This is not the end. It is the beginning, and somewhere the proof still waits. The flames died down, but the lies kept smoldering. Joe Travis saw what they tried to erase. Now it is your turn. Which piece of this buried truth shocked you most? Was Santa Anna truly marching for Washington, or was it all bluster? And who, in your view, is really buried in the Alamo's shadow? Type your thoughts right now in the comments. The most startling answers could change history. Do not scroll away. Your voice has a role in this fight for the truth. The screen is filled with the low, dancing glow of embers. The mournful fiddle melody returns, slower now, almost a whisper. We see the weathered journal from the intro, slowly closing. Weary, reflective, the fires died. The smoke cleared, and the legend was carved in stone. The image shifts to the modern Alamo chapel, peaceful in the sunlight. Then a quick, jarring cut back to the embers and the charred ground tone sharpening. But ash doesn't lie, and a witness cannot be unseen. Joe Travis walked out of that slaughter pen. He carried the truth of Travis's last strike, of Crockett's final stand, of the laughter around the pyre. He carried it past the Mexican lines, past the interrogations, and into a silence imposed for generations. Close up on the closed journal, a hand rests on it, then slides away, leaving it behind. So we are left with the burning questions, the ones the history books dare not ask. Text begins to appear on a dark screen, line by line, with a stark typewriter sound. Why spare a man, only to try and kill him minutes later? Why erase a colonel's final act of defiance from every record? Why inflate an army's size, unless the truth of their struggle was too dangerous? The most haunting question isn't in the documents, it's under our feet. The screen shows the iconic Alamo facade. The camera slowly pushes in, the shadow of the building growing longer, darker, consuming the frame. A final, direct challenge to the viewer who truly lies in the shadow of the Alamo, the heroes of the legend, or the victims of the truth. The story they told is over. Beat of silence. The story Joe Travis gave us is just beginning. The final shot is not of the monument, but of the quiet, empty field where the pyre burned. A single wind-blown ember glows briefly in the dirt before fading to black text, appears over a black background accompanied by a subtle, intriguing sound cue comment below one. Which buried detail shocked you the most? 2. Was Santa Anna's threat to march on Washington real or desperate bluster? 3. Your theory. Who is really buried in the Alamo's shadow? The most compelling answers will rewrite the story for everyone who watches next.